great to see you, Amanda. Thanks so much for taking the time out to do this. I know what a busy woman you are.
No, 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 thank you. I'm so excited that you did. I've been wanting to, talk with you like this for a long time. So,
Yeah, no, I remember. Obviously, you were at the Christmas, end of year film stack countdown, and
Mhm.
yeah, I enjoyed talking to you there. So it was always a sort of case I wanted to get you back on. And there, there's so much to talk about. I mean, there was the two particular articles that really sort of aligned with the way that I'm thinking at
Mhm.
the moment, particularly the one on film education, which we'll get into. But I've watched some of your work and everything like that, and obviously read you. So it's great to get into the weeds in a little bit more detail. In fact, where I wanted to start out was I just have come off watching your little short that you made, that NonDē Dangerous Ideas,
Mhm.
and it kind of again provoked my thinking in terms of filmmaking, but also sort of life more generally, because your idea was to throw away the rule book, not in the sense of the whole of the aesthetic fundamentals of filmmaking, like focus the camera or something like that. No,
Yeah.
you can keep that, but that idea of sort of limited by formulas and templates. But it's quite difficult to do, isn't it? We seem to be bombarded with like ideas of, if you follow this, then it will work, kind of thing.
Yes, 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 absolutely. And all like the script readers for all the competitions are like, well, they didn't do this in, the first 20 minutes of their screenplay. So obviously it's crap and I'll just throw it away. And it's like, no, like let it evolve naturally for the story. Don't worry about hitting all the plot points and everything, because that's not really the story, anyways. The plot
Yeah.
is, you
Is
know.
that something that you think is that you've been bounded by kind of historically and you've had to sort of unlearn, I guess?
Um, no, I don't think so. I just think it's everyone, they always talk about like three act structure, like when you're going
Yeah,
through
yeah,
film
yeah.
school and everything, it's like the three acts, the three acts, the three acts. And it's like I understand it, why it should work that way, but it's like I'm more interested in, like character based stories and stuff. And like it's all about the other stuff, not just the plot. Like the plot's just kind of there to support the larger ideas. So you don't have to hit all those points, you just have to like engage people and keep their interest, and there's many ways that you can do that. So I think
Yeah.
too many people get caught up in like worrying about hitting those marks exactly when, they were taught that they should be. So
Mm. Yeah, and I think also that the sort of unlearning of that in the audience is a key thing,
mhm.
isn't it? We're seeing all the time about how, I won't mention the horrible name of Netflix. It's obviously the bad seed at the moment when it comes to
Mhm.
filmmaking. But it's interesting, isn't it, where you read about how there is this system now of writing to, you must repeat, you must um, have the plot kind of explained over and over again, hit these markers, because the assumption is the audience is not listening. And in some ways, we've trained the audiences for that. You
Mhm.
could argue, but also it's kind of like treating the audience
Mhm.
as a little bit of a set of idiots, really, in some
Yeah.
ways.
Absolutely. Like, I don't even like, treating the audience like idiots like that in general,
Mm,
without repeating points twice. But it's like this idea that people are going to be on a second screen while watching something. Like, I just think that's awful because people's attention is already so scattered about through everything in life and stuff. It's like, can't you just sit
yeah,
down for this, 2 hours and like focus on this movie? And so, I think that it's important that we try to get people back to doing that because, that's really the only way, even for me, to like get into a film. It's like I really connect when I do sit there and I just like focus and, you're immersed in the story and the characters. And to keep breaking that with looking at another screen, it's like at the end of the day, I don't know, I just wouldn't really care about what I was seeing, or connect in that way.
yeah. I mean, I think I see that a lot now, where in different circumstances and different groups, that people are searching for that kind of experience once again. It makes you think that there is something kind of fundamentally real about sort of cinema, or unique, or in that sense of, you can't get that kind of experience elsewhere, which is, I think, kind of promising going forward, especially for this aim, let's say, of regenerating, or recasting or reimagining what cinema could be in the future.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that idea, like, with the even like scrolling the internet, you got to catch them in the first 10, like the 10
Yeah.
seconds of your thing has to be like this amazing bright. It's like, well, let's do like a slow burn, just
Yeah.
pay attention. So
Yeah, yeah. And your films, I've been watching the shorts that you've made, because you've made some that go back a few years, and then there's the one that is more recent that you were talking about on your Substack. And I think that there is that sort of sense of slow burn, character driven stuff. But we'll come to that in a second, though. But as I always do on these conversations, I'm really interested in the guest's kind of cinematic origin story. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. How did you get into the movies as a kid? Do you remember like the first time that you actually went to the cinema? What the first film you saw was? Do you have that kind of narrative in your mind?
yeah, I don't. I have like my memory. I have a really bad memory, so like specific moments and stuff, I don't remember them so clearly. Like I have a big. I remember feelings of things, and I remember like basic things, but be able to remember the first experience, like I can't do that. But my parents did tell me that it was we went to see E.T. at a drive-in theater.
Okay.
But yeah, when that came out, I was like 2 or 3, so it's like I don't remember that. But that was my first one that they told me that I saw. But like we were always really into movies and TV and like music. That's just as a family. My dad did that a lot, so I watched a lot of movies, with my dad and my parents. And he had was always really big into like electronics, and so we got like a VCR, and so we would always tape like the movies. We always had like HBO or whatever the new big cable channel was. Like we were really big on that. And then even like getting into high school, he always worked at places where it's like, oh, the guys at work's like have this black box, and we can get like the free pay per view movies now.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was
yeah.
just like it was a big part of growing up in general. Yeah,
Yeah, that sense that I don't know what it was. I had that where I remember when we got our first VCR, and that idea that you could record something and watch it again, it somehow just fundamentally changed the relationship to stuff that you saw. Like it wasn't going to be kind of like gone, and you had to catch it at a certain point. I
exactly.
don't know what psychologically why that was so powerful, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I guess like, yeah, you didn't all, I don't know, just to be able to like watch it over and over. And like, that's
Mm,
like, even back then, like, even like, 80s and 90s, it's like with everyone rewatching stuff, we have so many great lines that people always say and stuff. And like that part of culture is
yeah,
just kind of disappearing now. And I think it's
yeah.
because we used to watch stuff over and over, starting with like the VCR's ability to help us do that. And,
Yeah. Yeah, it's really weird how that's just become not even a thing,
yeah.
and it's changed over. But it's like I remember kind of like when you're kind of when you see a film that you really want to see, and then you record it, and it's kind of like gold dust. You've got it there then
Yep.
forever. There's no letting of it go. And there's just like rows of VCRs with the
Hmm.
carefully worded. I don't know whether you did that. Or
Yeah,
maybe that's a male
absolutely.
thing, we collections of stuff, you
Yeah,
know
well,
what I
no,
mean?
I mean, my dad had a huge one, and it was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
wow, like, I think he even still might have them, or at least recently, like, they moved recently, he might have gotten rid of some of them, but he even found, like, when he was moving, um, he was really into MTV too when it first
Okay.
started, and so he had
Yeah.
this found this, like, VHS of all the recorded, like, first videos and stuff. It was amazing. We were, like,
Yeah,
watching it.
yeah, yeah.
It was awesome.
And did your dad and your parents kind of start to take you like regularly to go and see stuff, kids movies and that kind of stuff?
Like I said, I don't really remember. I don't think we went to the movies as much as we would watch them at home,
Right, right,
but
right.
like it
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
always like an event even at home, because my dad always
Mm,
had like the best sound system. So it's like we turn out the
okay.
lights and you'd put it through the big speakers, not just the TV speaker. And like it was an event. But like I do remember we would do different things like I was a little older at the time, I guess like middle school or so, when like Terminator 2 came out and my parents were so excited. So we all watched like the first Terminator as a family, and then we all went to
Right.
the theater to see that. And so like things like that were really fun to do. Yeah.
Terminator 2, what a movie that was for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The in terms of sort of getting a little bit older, then there must have been a kind of moments where films really resonated with, like, maybe your adolescence or certain facets of your life. I mean, I had that, and even then, like thinking about going into film, like to study or even to think about making films. Did you have certain sort of moments when those sorts of things occurred?
um, I don't know. Yes and no. Like I just always loved movies, and I remember like The Never Ending Story. I remember that being one of the first movies that really like made me think about like cinema and how you can make these stories and stuff, and that really touched me, like, on a deep level. You watch it now and it's like, "Oh, this is a really depressing
Yeah.
film," like, we showed our kids and, like, when Atreyu dies, it's like, "Oh my god," like, it's the worst. Um, so, different things like that. I think also, like, I've always been I've always loved, watching cinema and just kind of putting myself in the character's shoes and, like, really, like, feeling what the character feels, so
Yeah,
not
yeah,
so much
yeah.
seeing myself on screen, but being able to, like, feel what it's like to be someone else and kind of, like, I guess within that, putting personalizing it a bit and like, "Oh, like, this character's totally different from me, but that's the same as, whatever in my life." Um, but, like, recently, I feel like, there's a film like, The Lost Daughter is one example of where it's just like, wow, like, a filmmaker really captured, like, the complex feelings of motherhood and, that,
Yeah.
like, how you're trapped and suffocated, and what's the line she says,
Mm,
like, "Children are a crushing responsibility," and it's, like,
yeah.
such a good balance.
That the
So
Joanna Hogg film? Is that, am I remembering that right?
and that's Maggie
S Oh,
Gyllenhaal.
sorry, so yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know who
yeah,
you mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and Olivia, I'm blanking
Olivia
on her last
Colman.
name. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Jessie Buckley, like, they're just amazing, and so it was like, wow, okay,
Mm,
this is, that was like, I can see myself on screen in that.
yeah. Yeah, but even in terms of your what you've written about your own filmmaking and the writing more specifically, there is that recurring theme that you seem to have about, rather than stories necessarily, like emotional resonances. And it seems that do you have that really kind of strong reactions to certain films? Like, because the reason I asked that is because I just don't feel that I have that in the same way as when I was a kid. You know what I mean? There's a moment when it's kind of everything. Maybe it's because I've watched too many movies and I've studied them too long. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I have that
yeah.
sort of distancing. But you seem to have that real kind of visceral reaction to films from reading your writing.
Yeah, yeah, I do, and, like, to a fault sometimes where it's like, if
Right.
I wanted to talk about something critically, I would have to watch it multiple times because I just, like, immerse myself in the character, you know what I mean? Like, so
Mm.
it's, so to break it down sometimes, I mean, obviously, like, really good films, you get it all from that, but, yeah, like, I don't know, that's just my favorite part of cinema, always has been, so, I cry a lot during movies and happy tears, sad tears, and it's, like, my favorite part of it, so, you know.
And so what brought you to want to go to study film? Because I've seen there from your biog, you went to San Francisco State and did
Mhm.
cinema there. Was
Yeah.
there was that sort of on the cards for a while for you?
Yeah, without sounding cliche, it's like it's what I've always wanted to do was, like, write and make movies and, like, even in, like, 5th grade, I, like, wrote a couple plays that I did for my class and, like, the one we got to do in the cafeteria finally, so I was like, "Oh, that's
Yeah,
fun."
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I've just always wanted to it's, like, the only thing I've really wanted to do. Um, it was either that or be a psychologist, study of
Well, they can
character,
go
I guess.
together, filmmaker and psychologist, perhaps in some
Yeah.
ways.
So that's what I think it is. It's that, just really liking to think about character and personalities in life and people's motivations and why people do stuff and why we're here. So I guess, yeah, film just always was the thing I wanted to do. So my
What
parents were
was the
nice
course?
enough to be
What
Mhm.
was the course like?
The what?
What was the BA in cinema? What kind of was it generally all kind of production? Did you do lots of different departments? Was there any kind of, like theory or history involved in that?
Yeah, yeah, no, San Francisco State was funny, it was very, theory based.
Oh, okay.
So, like, when we went there, it was we had this, like, ongoing competition with the Academy of Art kids because they had all the best equipment and all the fancy stuff, and their building was so beautiful and so great. We had this, like, old equipment that was all breaking, but, at the end of the day, we were always like, "Well, our films are better because we're saying something?" So, I was really glad that we got, like, heavy in theory, although when I left, I was like, "If I ever have to hear, like, penis envy or the male gaze again, I'm gonna go crazy." But, um, it was really good, and we really enjoyed it that way, and I think it really, helps you just, learn how to watch films and make films that have more to say, so it probably, like, greatly influenced the way that I look at cinema now. Maybe I would look at it a little different had I gone to, something more just Academy of Art sort of, process based.
Did your sort of taste change or were you introduced to kind of areas of film? Was there a moment maybe even when like you saw something, you were like, now I kind of understand that cinema is something more than just, a kind of thing that I enjoy or a go-to, that really sort of fundamentally changed things for you?
Yeah. Hmm.
Put you on
I
the
don't
spot
know.
there.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if that happened. Like again, my bad memory. I don't know if that happened in school so much. I think that happened more after like I moved to Los Angeles and I got involved with Filmmakers Alliance, that filmmaking collective. And like the founders of that, Jacques and his wife Diane, were really into, slow cinema and meaningful cinema. And so I think they really like influenced that, a lot. And then even like, when I went to Sundance the one year with them, like it was I think what was the film? Ballast by Lance Hammer, I believe his
Oh,
name
right. No, I
is.
haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, no, just beautiful. And it was one of the first times like the slow film, not much dialogue, and it really like I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. Like I was just had so many feelings, and I was like, this is the type of cinema that I really like. So
Did that? I mean, was that the prevailing sentiment against amongst your cohort, or were most people kind of like wanting to, be the next Tarantino or whatever,
yeah, no, luckily they were very much like,
Art house.
independent film,
Yeah,
art
yeah, yeah.
house, like we are not going to be in Hollywood. My mom, of course, and dad, they're like, why don't you go get a job in Hollywood? And I like never wanted to. I was like, no, it's
Right.
crap. Like, indie film all the way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then was that sort of a sense of what the next step was when you left there, getting into filmmaking? And we see again from the biography, you started work with the Filmmakers Alliance, and
mhm.
was the plan always to kind of try and do a little bit of work in the industry, but then have develop projects independently? What was the sort of thinking coming out of university?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I wanted to, be an independent filmmaker, and I had no idea how to do that. Because unfortunately, we didn't have like a great because it was more theory based, so we didn't have like a portfolio to show leaving. I mean, we did a couple projects during school, but we didn't really have anything. Um, so then, being when I started with the collective, it was like, okay, here's a group, and it's like it was a group of filmmakers that all like help each other make films. So it was a great way where I could work there and also work on my own projects, So it's like you're developing all these seminars and everything, but it's like you're learning all this stuff too that like you want to learn. And um, so it was a really nice way to get in there and do that and be able to like do the work as you're making a living. So, it was ideal. It was like the best job ever. So
Great. That
yeah.
sounds good. So is that when, the development of Plus or Minus came into being?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I made that after. I was like with them for a couple of years.
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And what was, I mean, again, it's interesting because I've watched both of that and The Cycle.
Hmm.
And it seems like, that there is a recurring interest in kind of women at threshold moments, I guess, of like pregnancy, adolescence, grief,
Yeah.
emotional inheritance, whatever you want to call it. I mean, is it too simplistic to call these kind of biographical films? Looking back now, what was your younger self trying to say at that point?
Yeah, I think I know, right? I think there is always a bit of like me and everything I do just naturally because it's like, based off of things that I'm obsessing over in my brain. So like the plus or minus came about and also it's like not really seeing stories about, women's psychological makeup enough or like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
really the complexities of them. Um so, plus or minus came about. My oldest sister had a baby when I was a freshman in high school. She had just graduated and she had a child. And I just remember like going through the what are you gonna do phase. And it was like, there's no choice that's good. And so like that one, it was just like I just want to show that because people seem to always like make it seem
Yeah.
like it's a easy choice, and it's not. So like let's show like just how like horrible each choice can be. So that's why it's like tongue in cheek and it's a bit campy intentionally because it's like in her head, veers towards the horrific. And then also the cycle, the same way, like this moment, it's like one of the biggest moments in a woman's life, but it's can be like so scary and terrifying for, people going through it and stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess. back then it was like being a woman is horrible, but
Yeah.
not really, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that there has been sort of recent, especially with the abortion issue in America,
Mhm.
there's been films that are very kind of, talking about sort of realism, which we'll talk about later on. They're very sort of powerful in terms of trying to capture both the kind of social difficulties and then the impact psychologically on women. Do you think that maybe that has gotten become more of a subject? I think that has been covered in filmmaking, but perhaps when you made these, it was something that wasn't as visible.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, definitely not visible to me,
Mm.
but definitely, and they have gotten has gotten better, like, are you talking about, like, Never Always,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Accept the Worst?
Never,
Yeah,
rarely,
yeah,
sometimes, always,
yeah,
and
there you
then
go.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, great film. Um, yeah, so it's really nice to see stuff like that, being made and the discussion opening up in,
yeah.
like, a serious, more complex way.
Mm.
Um,
But you were trying to again, even with that, with those earlier films, it seemed to me, in terms of the style you were talking about, you call it
yeah,
campy. I mean, there's a comedic element
yeah,
to it, but I think also that it seems to me as well, there's someone there, i.e. you, sort of searching for a signature in a way. Looking back
yeah.
now, you were thinking about, I need this to be kind of like my film visually in some way.
I guess I wasn't looking necessarily for me, I think it was just going through what works for the story the best. I mean, I guess the stuff where it's like we're in her reality and we are, like, closer on her with her, that's something more towards that style that I do like, but I think it was just, yeah, like, filming it, you know, in the best way just for whatever's happening, psychologically with the character and stuff, is the way I was looking at it when I was, making it.
And like you've written a little bit about I mean, there was a big gap between that and then That's Not My Mother,
Mhm,
which feels more, it feels kind of slightly more contemplative, I
mhm.
guess. So what were you? I mean, were you thinking, that in your filmmaking, you wanted to kind of change the style? Maybe I don't want to use like more mature or something like that, but that it had this kind of story that was more introspective and didn't potentially need those wider comedic elements or campy elements. What was your
Yeah,
thinking
yeah,
visually there?
yeah, I think that, the gap was, what was half, like, towards the end of Filmmakers Alliance when I was there, it was during the beginning of the whole independent film is dying, and,
Right.
then that job, I wasn't working there anymore, so I was kind of like, "Do I even wanna be in film anymore? Is it worth it? Is it so
Right.
hard?" So I kinda tried to leave and, like, maybe I'll be a teacher, and that didn't work out. So I was like, I'm not an elementary school teacher. Like, maybe college professor I could do at some point, but not elementary. And then I got married, I had kids, and it was like, "Oh, I'll have a kid and I'll be able to start filmmaking right up again." Um, and then that didn't happen. So during that gap, I think that naturally also did, like, I do feel like my work is more mature now. Like, I feel like when I look at, like, plus or minus in the cycle, it feels like I was kinda, like, proving a point with them, and this now I'm trying just to more pose questions, um,
Yeah.
instead of, like, pounding people over the head with what the things
Yeah.
mean, so I do feel like there was just a natural maturity that happens. You
Well, there's definitely a
become
sense, I think, that the viewer is not, or is given more space, let's say, to kind of like think about what's going on here rather than being told what's going on
Yeah,
here, in a
exactly.
sense,
Yeah,
which I think is always nice, because that, I've bang on it about it all the time. We're being told what to think, or at least told what, in absolute clear terms, this is what the character feels right now,
yeah,
and there's no
mhm,
sort of gap for that
yeah,
kind of resonance. I mean, I don't know.
mhm,
Do you think that, like, there's a lot more psychologically rich stories about women, it seems to me
mhm,
anyway. I don't know whether, you would say that it's anywhere near enough, but I mean, you've written about like that, Die My Love and certain other, and then there's The Bride as well, where there's that, and sort of talking even about like modes of trauma or hysteria or whatever,
mhm,
that now seems to be, a real focus in a lot of work that's been coming out recently.
yeah, yeah, And I think it's nice to see. I still think that it has like a lot more that it can do, and I'm excited to see what, um, people come up with. And it's always interesting to hear like the criticisms, that
Yeah.
happen with things. 'Cause it's funny. It's like it's still like, oh, it goes too far, and
Right.
all the time I love God. And it's like, but like that film, like I related to that so much. And yes, that's like very extreme, but like, oh my gosh, the way that they filmed those, the way that she filmed like the nighttime scenes when she's, awake with the baby and everyone's asleep, like you could just feel like that's what it feels like. It's like this weird, like surreal sort of feeling. You're like in
Yeah.
between, you haven't got any sleep and you're like totally losing yourself. So it's like, you know, um, I think they nailed it, and then people like just don't get it. And you're like, okay, so we have a longer way to go, I guess, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that, it is nice
Yeah.
to see more of it and refreshing.
Mm. Well, I mean, I think now you can, I mean, again, you have to see what you think about this, but it seems so obvious now when there's a female character that is just there for kind of functional reasons. It
Yeah,
just, to me, it sticks out so obviously. Even if it's a great actress sort of who has to play a kind of wife role, it's still, and in certain stories there has to be those those women, right? But when it's not given any kind of psychological three-dimensionality, it just seems
yeah.
so obvious now.
Mhm. Yeah, like, yeah, the quirky, fun woman that cheers up the sad guy and helps him through, like, that one, I'm just,
Yeah.
like, so done with that, 'cause
Yeah.
it's like and especially when it's like, the male character is being, like, so awful. You're like, "There's no way, like, a woman should take that or just be like, 'Oh, it's okay, sweetie,' like,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
we
yeah,
can know
yeah.
better?"
Yeah.
So yeah, and it does, you're right, it does, like,
Mm.
absolutely stand out more now, so
I mean, this is a question I've always kind of wrestled with, especially in teaching as
Mhm.
well. Um, that idea of, and this is a tricky one, I think. It's like, do you think there is such a thing as a style or an aesthetic that can be associated with gender or race or any other kind of cultural identity? Like, say, for example, that a black filmmaker has the kind of sole propriety over an aesthetic that is quote unquote black. You know what I mean? Because my question about that is whether nobody can ever kind of make a comment on anything that they don't experience themselves. Do you know what I mean? And that's that, you take that to extreme. Nobody can make any films about anything apart from who they are.
Yeah. Well, that's really funny that you're saying that right now because I was starting to think up a next Substack post and it was going to be about that because especially now like you get whenever you're submitting to a lab or anything it's like why you to tell this story?
Right.
And it feels loaded in that way.
Indeed.
Like, "Oh, I'm not a homeless person, so are you saying that I can't tell this story or that I would be better suited if I had lived in my car for 5 years?"
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I think that's wrong. I mean, there's people that exploit sure, there's people that exploit, other groups and this and that, but there's also, like, a natural artistic curiosity that comes with some people, and it's like, I think that a man can tell a really great woman's story, and I think that, someone who's straight can tell a really great, LGBT plus story, so I don't think that
Yeah.
you should be I think that's very limiting, and I think there is a lot of, like, overlap, like, it's funny 'cause, like, Taylor just released that article on the,
Black naturalism.
Black yeah, 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 and I was like, but so much of that is, like, also what I feel is, like, modern social realism,
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean? And it's like so it's, like, beautiful, I think the overlap and stuff that can happen, even within, like, culture and this and that and the mix, so,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't think that, I think that's a
Mm.
very limiting belief and yeah, that
Yeah,
question
it's,
just
I mean, and there's so many examples replete in cinema history where somebody, I like, one of the best films for me about kind of white male sexuality is made by Steve McQueen,
yeah,
and like that sort of understanding of that
mhm,
is so clear. And then
a shame,
yeah, Shame is so
yeah,
good, and like the sort of Catherine Bigelow's Commando kind of action cinema is
mhm,
so good. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like the idea
mhm,
that you can align sort of again these cultural identities with particular modes of aesthetics. I think is
yeah,
is kind of problematic.
yeah,
Um, just on your filmmaking, it's interesting to me if there is a sort of theme to your representations. From just the three films that I've seen, one of them is I think is the idea that it's a condition of many women's experiences, caveat not all, and you say that in the writing as well, that women are often fundamentally trapped in the anxiety of others' expectations. I
Mhm.
mean, you've talked about being a people pleaser. I was just wondering, whether in your sort of reflections on that, why you think that's such a facet of women's sense of themselves, maybe.
Um, I mean, I guess it's because it's something that I think is instilled for so long, like even, I have 3 kids, I have my daughter's older than I have 2 twin boys that are 8, and then my daughter's going to be 12. And so, everyone's always like, "Oh, well, she must help out so much." Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, no, actually, like she's
yeah, yeah,
not the
yeah,
typical, like girl helper, this and that. So I just think like we're socialized, that way um, for so long. So I think that it's just like that becomes your default,
yeah.
before you even can think about what it means you're doing it. You're being conditioned to do it.
Well,
So
I think it's definitely easier in a general sense that for
mhm,
men to be able to say, "Screw you, I'm going to do what I want to do."
mhm,
You know what I mean? And that again might lead to some of the reasons why men get to make more films than women, I guess,
mhm.
in the broader sense. I mean, it's far more complicated than that. But it's it's just an interesting thing I was sort of thinking about when I was sort of reading your reflections on your own work in that
Yeah.
sense.
And I mean,
Um,
even, like, we're so, the patriarchy and everything. So it's like, I think even deep in there ingrained is like, it used to be like women needed men to take care of them. Like we didn't
yeah,
even have credit cards for like so long. You know what I mean? So I think that is still like you
yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah,
feel like your survival, it's like kind of ingrained in your
yeah,
genetic makeup that your survival also depends on being
yeah.
agreeable.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it's paradoxical in a structural sense.
Mhm.
Obviously, that's the fundamentals to historical patriarchy,
Mhm.
really. But actually, when you look at the inside of relationships, often it's the other way around, and men
Yeah,
need women to look
exactly.
after them, like because they're all little
Exactly.
boys, really. You know what I mean? I'll admit to that.
Absolutely. Yep.
um, in terms of you moving on to Substack.
Mhm.
Why did you wanna start a Substack? Was it something I mean, again, was it just a kind of, accidental people are on Substack now, or was there a sort of more of intentionality to it?
Um, there was I guess it's a mix of both, I would say. I do love writing and I've always loved writing. I never got on the blog thing early on, but like I had like a folder on my laptop that was always like if I ever started a blog and it had all these blog write-ups of different things. So that was kind of something I wanted to do and I never did. And then, really, I mean, it was like I was following Ted Hope and then he was on Substack and it was just like so many posts about why it's important for filmmakers to build their audience and that Substack's this great platform for that. And then I even, you know, the platform felt um better for me because it's the long form writing and so it's like less flashy. Like I don't have a TikTok still to this day, but I can't see myself ever posting TikTok videos. I mean, unless I have to, but I'm just not. I don't really like being in front of the camera and this and that. So the long form writing felt nice in that way, and just like I started to see how people really were making connections, and like it was nice to get to know people through these longer form essays and stuff. And then it's just the repeated like you should do this if you're a filmmaker. So I was like, okay, I'll try it. um and so I just did it. But I definitely think mine, like I don't know what it's about fully. Like, it needs a rebranding or something. Like, I'm not good at that. And I'm like, I just kind of write what I want to write when I want to write it.
Mm.
So
No, but you
it's,
do. I think there is a brand there, I would say, and I don't even want to use the word brand. There is a style or a form that, and to me, it's kind of you start out kind of like very accessible, like there's a personal register, often a story or a frustration or a joke or whatever, um, and then that reflects your filmmaking life and gradually morphs into something larger. Is that again a
mhm.
sort of stylistic intention, or just the way you
it's,
write, really?
yeah, it's just the way it comes out. Like, like I said,
Yeah.
there's not the most intention.
Mm.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's intention to, like, I'm writing a post and I wanna write that post, but
Yeah.
like, you just pointed that out, I'm like, "Oh, I didn't notice I do that."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's
So
I mean, it's interesting because I'm
Mm,
always sort of reticent. I'm like, nobody wants to really hear about me. I'm not that interesting. It's like the only thing I've got is that I've read a few hundred books about cinema and have talked about it for years. That's all I can do really. But it's funny
yeah,
how I think sometimes people want that entry point because it gives them a sense of empathy or association with the way that you're feeling as a human being, really. And I think obviously, we're in this era of AI. The idea
mhm,
that there is a person there, I think, is more and more important. Like this is why I've started doing this a lot more, and why I'm going to do the lectures, because I think actually turning up live to something, you guarantee that it's not AI.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, 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 I wanna hear more about the lectures, but also, like, on that beat, it's funny because I guess I write the way I do because one of the reasons that, it was like, "Oh, you gotta build your audience," and, like, wanting to build a community, so, like, I kinda do it because I want people to get to know me and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
my
yeah,
work, so it's from that angle, so that's why it's like I don't charge for it because it's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
why would I charge anyone to hear my ramblings like
Hmm.
that? You know, so I think that does, I guess, reflect then the reason that I started it, it's just
Yeah,
like, "Here I am, get to know me, let's all hang out and talk
yeah.
about films," and
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we'll definitely come to the keep saying we'll come back
yeah.
to this. We'll come to the education thing in a second. But again, that's because again I'm always in two minds that I have that ambivalence about just doing everything for free, but then building something. But I left, so I'm trying to build something that sits alongside what I teach in a way. But it's always I'm like you, and it's kind of like why should anybody pay for anything? But we've all got to live, haven't we? We've all got.
Exactly.
There's one thing that Courtney was very clear on, and I kind of admired that. That sort of
Mhm.
sense of if everybody's got to eat, so you've got to figure it out some way in that
Oh, yeah,
sense.
yeah, absolutely.
So how do you sort of see yourself within the kind of non-D film stack movement, if I can call it that?
Um, that's a good question. I don't know. I guess like as maybe like a community builder of
Mm,
that. I really just like trying to connect everyone. That's why I'm really like excited about the when I was asked to be, one of the guest curators for the Daily Digest. It's really
sure,
nice to
sure.
be able to do that, on
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
have a bigger audience and like guide them towards articles that I thought were, really useful and helpful. Um that's good. And then like the deep dive that we started, I love that. I love being able to like take out all the because you see so many connections and so many people are talking about similar topics and stuff. And so being able to just like compile those into, one big post that people can go back to and look and stuff. So that I really like doing. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess that, just helping build the community and get the word out there. You know, hopefully with the nonprofit that I'm starting, it could be to like help educate people, but that's a
yeah.
long, slow process. So
No, but I think I think again, sort of related back to the kind of noise of the internet and the noise of culture, that sort of sense of creating methods of curation, I guess, for yourself and then for other people, because there's nothing better than like human recommendation. I sort of put it on my
yeah.
Substack all the time. It's the way to
Mhm.
beat the algorithm. So I
Yeah.
think it's so useful, and as well, it's that there's a really nice kind of dynamic that it doesn't feel networky yet. I don't know whether you feel like that. I mean, again, it's very different being over here in the UK because obviously everything, most of the stuff is based in America, but it definitely doesn't feel like we're just sort of translating that kind of network productivity hustle to something else. It does feel different to that. I mean, I don't know whether you agree.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It definitely like that's why, I even started and did it. Like it does feel more like a community. People are supportive, there's
Yeah,
not much there's like I haven't come across any like nastiness in comments or, anyone, trying to rile people up really.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I do worry, like it does feel I feel like a little shift. And it's also like, when's the ball gonna drop because most social media platforms go bad, just with the nature of growing big and capitalism and, um, so we'll see. Hopefully we can keep it, but it was just really nice to find, an expanded filmmaking community that, where it
Yeah.
seems like, a lot of people have a lot of the same, values and goals for filmmaking and, interest in like deep, meaningful cinema.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have a place for that.
It's interesting having it as a kind of ecosystem within the platform as well, isn't it? Because actually you can, I think what's been cultivated is something that is sort of in some ways immune to some of the other problems that are out there on every
Hmm.
platform, because the community is quite concentrated in that sense. But it doesn't, if this movement is going to move beyond Substack, which I'm guessing is kind of like the aim, it sort of needs to, that it can't be too enclosed, because then it becomes kind of inaccessible or you know cliquey, I guess.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know whether you think that there is a sort of work to be done on what the next stage of kind of non-D and film stack is.
I mean, it's interesting. I think that there definitely needs to be a building out of a lot of just the data and the information and the educational stuff that is being produced on there. Like that's what I worry. I was like,
Yeah,
if Substack ended tomorrow, like where would all this go? So I feel like it does need, a home and this and that. Like I don't know if that's one day, there being some sort of non-D nonprofit that started and it's just
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah,
the center for the resources in the hub or what. But I don't think it's quite there yet, but it's something like that, should be thought about, I think, so
yeah.
we don't lose all of this.
Mm. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I've tried to sort of have a parallel place to store
Hmm.
everything, which is hence why I sort of do this and then stream it on the Substack. Seems to be working, so
Yeah, nice.
so that's good in
Yeah.
terms of in terms of using the platform in that sense. But I
Hmm.
I too have the same reservations, and there'll be a point where it's going, oh, we all have to up sticks and move to another platform because everything's gone to
Exactly.
shit on here.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to talk about a couple of these individual pieces.
Hmm.
Particularly, let's start with "We're Teaching Filmmakers Everything Except How to Find Their Voice," which is really interesting to me.
Hmm.
And I think there's elements of it I really agree with in an idealized kind of. If everything was great, then we could do that. But I think there's a lot of caveats that get in the way,
Yeah.
really. So, tell me about what motivated that piece. I mean, between the lines, maybe it's something to do with you commenting on your own experience at university.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, a little bit. It's what motivated is like I'm building out an educational nonprofit with my partner Thomas Ethan Harris. Um, and so we're trying to figure out, how to set this up and how to do it. And so like that's the biggest question like of my piece, like, is it possible? You know what I mean? Because like you said, it's like the idealized version and this and that, but there's so many like factors in it. Like one question I keep coming back to is like, is it possible to teach like anyone to find their voice? Like
Yeah, 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 yeah,
it's almost like therapy. Like it only works if like you're willing to go there and you want to. And it's like there's so many people who probably don't care. So then like I don't know. Um, you know, um yeah, so it's like how do you teach that? Like do you have any thoughts? I'm sure that you infused a lot of your stuff with that, your lessons.
yeah. Well, yeah, I've got I mean, again, it's interesting because obviously I come from an institutionalized background, and I've taught historically on courses that are combination theory and practice. I'm actually at a film school now, which is all practice, trying to help the students have some kind of scholarly attachment or way of looking at their own work from a scholarly perspective. And actually, it's been largely positive in that sense. But I think at undergrad level, it's much more difficult. And I think, I mean, part of it is to do with the students themselves, but then also their own cultural, social kind of socialization, really, the way they're brought up and the way that social media and stuff works is all part of it. I mean, I think the problem is most students actually have so little experience. What is their voice at that point if they're 18, 19, 20? And then alongside that, most of them actually don't want to be introspective. They will give anything not to be emotionally vulnerable at that age. So it's kind of like what they make up for in that is, oh yeah, let's be interested in kit and equipment, and as you said. So I think there's a difficulty, even if you wanted to do it. We're in this scenario now where I think that there's a wider societal and cultural problem that is making students or young people generally more reticent to be in that position, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but, like, do you see that itself as a problem?
What do you mean in terms of?
In the society view of it,
Yeah,
like
no, no,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I don't know how much that is um, a, a, an outcome of the way that society has changed, particularly, when since social media has come along, and you look at the studies that talk about anxiety and mental health. I mean, I'll give you an anecdotal example. Like I was reading this article about how now young people don't dance. They don't dance anymore. And it's like, what do you mean they don't dance? They don't dance because everything gets recorded, and they don't want to be the next day the person who gets shamed on social media. So they're not going to put themselves. So if we're in a position now where young people are being taught not to put themselves out there in any way and not to embrace embarrassment because they know they have to live with that now forever, then how do you teach them to be emotionally vulnerable in front, and write stories about that when there's a barrier up,
yeah, yeah, oh, that's awful. Um, yeah, like and yeah, so I don't know what the answer is to that either, but it's like something needs to be done. And it's even like that's what scares me most, I think, about like the rise of AI. It's just like because also, like, within that, not only not wanting to be recorded and be embarrassed, but it's like, critical thinking, like, we're just losing that so much, and that's a part of, finding
Yeah,
your
yeah,
voice
yeah,
and everything just because it starts, I think, with starting to look at things critically and think about them and add the why, and it might not come from, like, the most personal place at first because they don't have that much experience, but, like, reaching that way, I think, would help them build it but easier and quicker over time. Um but yeah, and then, like, with AI, like, we start using all these tools and, it's like, yeah, it seems great and makes everything easier, but, like, critical thinking is just going down, down,
mm.
down, 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 you know?
But that's the answer. I think that's where you're onto something in terms of the answer, which is that we have to recognize that the age of 18 to 21 is still incredibly young. Right? I mean, if I was in charge, I would say that there should be now another 2 years before they get to the level that they would be at university now. So, like saying to young people, actually, you don't get the choice to go to university until you're 20, 20, 21. I mean, that will never happen because it's a business, right? So the 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 way then that you'd have to reconfigure higher education is those first years need to be critical thinking, they need to be philosophy, they need to be social skills and soft skills, so that and teaching the idea that you can fail and it's fine, and
Mhm.
whether that has to go in tandem with a ban on phones
Yeah,
in literally
exactly.
in the
Could be.
building, what I mean?
Yeah.
There's these kind of revolutionary. I mean, it's not really in my mind. It's not that controversial, but if you try to do it, it would be impossible. And maybe the way around it is actually that you have schools, quote unquote, that are outside of the system that are set up that are defined and shaped in that, or they try to shape students in that way. And then at
Yeah.
some point,
Yeah,
whether
the
it's film
balance
or
of
whether
both.
it's art or whether it's writing,
Yeah.
that those skills then are inherent when you pick up a camera or whatever, or the desire, the curiosity to look at yourself in that way is there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and, like, those are definitely, like, the more important skills, when I was working at a film school, like, they were talking about how, most of the kids don't wanna do the soft skill classes and this and that, and then they graduate, and it's like, yeah, they know how to operate a camera, but they can't even, like, go on an interview,
No,
because
no,
they have
no.
no idea
Yeah,
what
yeah,
to
yeah,
do
yeah.
or say, or, like, they can't, write an essay, and it's like, those things are more important to, like, your
Yeah,
your your ability to live,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, the
um
other thing is as well, we have to accept there is a sort of class-based element to that, where the students who will excel, it's because they've had educational and life opportunities at a younger age, And I mean, I feel that's the qualifying hierarchy even more than gender and race fundamentally, because in some ways it doesn't matter what race or gender you are. If you're educationally,
Mhm.
advantaged, then you can overcome some of those. I mean, all right, it might be easy for me to say that as a white man, but you can always find that the money class aspect kind of really
Absolutely.
does shape those elements as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's awful, and especially, like, education is so bad here, it's just, I mean, that is like the next epidemic we're facing. But of course, the powers that be want it that way. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, it's heartbreaking, like how bad it is and how many people don't have access to, basic reading and writing
Sure.
skills.
So what's the sort of the general motivating factor behind the non-profit? Is it, because you see, like in your own children, like I don't have any children, but I always sort of think to myself, people who do have kids, it's like,
Mhm.
how do they feel about the next 20 or 30 years? It must be so hard, you know?
God, yeah. I'm like, "What did I do?" Like, "You poor kids, I'm sorry." Um, yeah, no, I wanted to do it because I do love talking about cinema and teaching and working this out, and, like, we all need day jobs, and when I was, working at Filmmakers Alliance in the nonprofit sector, like, it was so rewarding personally,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so, we just have, my Thomas, we have the seminar series that we're going to start with that he used to do a while ago. And so we're going to like revamp them and do those. And it's just like they're so great and they're so rich and they're all about, like visual communication and stuff. And so I'm just always like, you have to keep sharing this with people. Like this is the gap that I'm, seeing more and more within, filmmaking. And so it's like, let's just try to fill it as even if it's small and like so I don't know, just like this desire to want to do that, but
Yeah.
it is really difficult.
And to be honest with you, the space that is being left by the decimation of what you'd call liberal arts, what's arts and humanities over here, these courses are getting closed down all the time. So it's kind of the motivating factor for why I started the Substack as well. It's because,
Hmm.
like, the idea that I know I'm gonna charge my subscription for it, but a fiver to have like lectures on a particular
Hmm.
film subject is not bad, I don't think. Particularly when you're getting charged 9 grand
Exactly.
over here for tuition and stuff like that. And
Uh-huh.
I think there is a space for that because people are interested in it. And I still think, even though I am on board with what a lot of people write about in terms of the you know not having a canon and not saying everything should be done like it always has done. I still think filmmaking vocabulary and a sort of knowledge of where the history of the medium has come from, I think is it can only really help. That's still what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what, that conversation also, it gets me really upset because it's like, oh, they're just trying to hold on to the past in cinema. But like there's a reason. Like it's important and you're saying something. And I think I'm okay feeling like a dinosaur in this because I think that, you know, our society does better when we have more arts and we have more of that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and just because all the money making is going in the opposite way and everyone's saying, you have to, things are going this way. It's like, no, that's just what they're saying. But
Mm.
I don't know. I've seen enough people that I think, care and stuff. So hopefully we can make sure that cinema stays in the cultural conversation and a cultural force.
I think it definitely. I
Yeah.
I think the signs are still good, even though it
Yeah.
can foretell the death of cinema every 5 minutes for
Yes,
sure.
exactly.
Um, So the other piece I wanted to just mention as well is the social realism piece,
Mm, mhm,
because that's really interesting. You describe, because I've written quite a lot about and taught a bit about realism in its
mhm,
kind of conceptual sense, but also in the social realism sense, the political sense. But you talk about describing a kind of emotional infrastructure for the present moment. So
mhm,
it seems to me what you're talking about is that the idea it's not simply political or issue driven, but
mhm.
it's a way of helping audiences process reality. Is that right in terms of what you're saying in a way?
Yes, 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 and it is, it's more, but through that there is a political element still,
Right.
like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it's just one of those things. It's like you can, I still like am a firm believer in, the whole cinema as an empathy machine and stuff.
Sure, sure, sure.
And I think that, it can really help change. And I think one of the biggest ways is that way through the emotional aspect. So it's like if you can sit there with someone, who you would never be in their shoes, and if you could do that for like 2 hours with them, then I think you're more likely to go and submit to the cause rather than someone just being like, here, you need to submit to this. This is bad. Like that just feels more preachy and like you're telling people what to do. Um, And so just getting into the emotional infrastructure, I think, like, it just motivates people more and in a way without even, like, them realizing it at first, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So I think that's more powerful than, being kind of more didactic or on the nose with it.
sure.
Um
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've over here we have like sacred cows like Ken Loach, who is
Mhm,
is great. He's like a absolute legend of filmmaking. But yeah, his filmmaking hasn't really changed in like 40, 50 years, and it does have a sort of uh, bashing you over the head, especially in recent movies. I think a sort of a real didactic element to it. But I really like that sort of distinction that you make between kind of care and advocacy, or observation versus judgment.
mhm,
Um, but I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that sort of social realism has historically been tied to class and labor and institutions and political structures. And I think it's still important that we identify what those are, because I think they're a lot more complex now than sort of the working class versus the upper class kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, especially since, like, that divide is, it's more and more, and it's like the
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, and I think that, I do think, like, the style, like, doesn't have to be also, like you said, like that, slow burn, like, typical realism, nitty-gritty. I think there's still room to be bold and
Mm,
ambitious and, like, form-wise, play with it, but overall, I think that, it does us well to, at least with me, like, the slow down, just really look at people and, like, the complexity of, things, and it's not like, "Here's the answer," it's like, "Here's the question," it's
sure.
complex, like, "What do we do about it?"
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like complexity without resolution necessarily to, like, give audiences the space to sit with it and talk about it afterwards,
Mm.
and
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always an interesting one, that, because sometimes now I get frustrated when it's like, okay, so what's your solution?
yeah.
Everything's shit, but how are we gonna
Yeah, like, I
kind of try
remember
and solve everything?
yeah, like your post of, like, Sound of Falling.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, I felt the same way, like, it was so bleak and
yeah,
so, like, so I do, like, in my work, I do like to try to put, like, hope in there, like,
mm,
my films are like, my 2 feature scripts that I have, they're very heavy and stuff, but there is, like, hope, there is goodness, and it's like, you know, I think I'm guiding towards an answer without hitting people on the head of it, and that's always something more, like, uplifting in what they can do, and I hope to also, like, tie in the action steps with my films. So they are like social impact films, but maybe don't feel that way right off the bat. But then there's like, here, now that we've talked about this, like, here's things you can do.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
No, it's interesting because I'm looking forward to reading. Obviously Taylor's got a post coming out, a whole kind of release, hasn't she, on social realism? I've done a piece for that. I think you have as well, haven't you? You've done some more
Unless
like
she's including my first one, I haven't
right,
done anything updated.
right, right. No, no, it'd be interesting to see what you make of that as well. Maybe we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
carry on that conversation. So tell me, are you working on a feature right now as well, trying to develop that?
Yes. Yes. I have a feature script and I've just got to figure out how to raise money for
Right.
it.
Okay.
So
That's
yeah.
always the tricky part. Is that
Yeah.
again in a similar sort of vein to the work you have been doing? Can you tell us anything about it?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. It was, I was inspired for the idea by I found out that in Los Angeles they have this thing called the burial of the unclaimed dead, and
Okay.
it's like when people die and their bodies aren't claimed, they're cremated and then they have 3 years and they try to find someone to claim the bodies. But if they don't, they have a mass grave that they do and they have an interfaith funeral ceremony for it.
Right.
So it's just really beautiful, and I've gone to the ceremony like 2 years in a row. And it just got me thinking, of course, like, who are these people in there? Like, what happens? Like, how does one get, to become unclaimed? So the story follows like 5 different characters in Los Angeles that are like marginalized characters, and just kind of like bits of their life. They don't interweave and like see each other like a crash or anything. But as you watch it, you realize like, oh, these are all people who were, you know, gonna be unclaimed at the end. So it's
Yeah.
really asking like, what does life mean if no one's there to mourn you in the end? No. So, and also like, how we as a society could do better at like noticing and looking and, not just ignoring
Yeah.
these people and stuff. So,
Yeah. No, it sounds like kind of like something that taps into that sense of where in life now we tend to spend so much time just doing shit because we feel
hmm
like it has to get done without sort of stepping back and saying what is really really important. I know I'm just horrific at thinking about that, you know.
hmm yeah, yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's a lot about, the isolation and loneliness, like
sure.
big problems. Funny today we have, more connected as ever, but everyone's more lonely as
Yeah,
ever. So,
yeah. Indeed. No, well, I look forward to hearing about that. Hopefully, you get some funding together. I mean, I know obviously it's really that's the hardest part, really, at the end of the day when it comes to filmmaking. Listen,
mhm.
thanks so much, Amanda, for all the time you've given me. It's been fantastic. I still have my 10 questions on cinematic identity to
Okay.
finish off with. I don't know if you've seen these, anyone else answer these, but it's just a quick question, and then you can give some caveats to your answers, and then at the end, the last question, number 10, is kind of specific to you. So if you're ready, we'll
I'm
do
ready.
this. Okay. So question one: what's your favorite cinema in the world?
Jeez. Oh, I'm not sure. I love them all. But I would say, I guess, like here in Los Angeles, where I am, I like the Vista. I think they still do like 70 millimeter prints, and you don't like get your seat reserved, so you have to actually like wait in line and then go sit in and find a seat, and that's kind of fun to do again. So
I'm really looking forward to coming to America when your present regime has passed,
yes,
and because
I
the
know
thing
that'd be
is, I've
soon.
I've heard of so many great cinemas from guests over this. Oh, I need to go to
Mhm.
New York and Los Angeles and go see some of these cinemas for sure.
Yeah, and it's
Okay,
like a beautiful old, cinema house. Like it's gorgeous. So
yeah, yeah, no,
yeah.
it sounds great. So yeah, I think somebody else has actually mentioned that as well. That one. Okay, question two: watching alone or watching with others?
Ooh. Watching with others, I would say, like, because I love going to the theater, but I also will go alone, like, because, you're just watching a movie, so I don't mind being by myself, but I like
Sure.
being in the theater with other people.
Isn't
As long as
it?
they're not sitting next to me making mouth
Yeah.
noises, because
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it amazing how that is still for so many people a taboo, the idea of going to the cinema alone, you know?
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, no, I love it. I'm like, it's the one place you can go alone, you're just sitting in the dark
Indeed.
watching a movie.
Correct. Okay, question three, front row or back row?
Oh, well, it would be middle of the middle, but
Right.
back if I
Okay.
had to choose back or front.
Okay. Yeah, you don't want to be too close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, same
I'm
with
always
me. I get the neck
strategic, like,
problems.
middle of the middle. Yeah. Can't see, I get nauseous, it's like
Okay, question four, a filmmaker whose work you will always see in the theater.
ooh. Huh. I would probably go for, like, maybe I'll say, like, P.T. Anderson. Um, there's always, like, a grand beauty about it. I mean, anyone that I can try to go see, because I love
Sure.
seeing films that way, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great. Well, I think, I mean, it's interesting because like for me recently, the one film this year that I'll definitely be going to the cinema to see is June
mhm,
3. You know, everybody says The Odyssey, but
mhm.
I'm not bothered about that. But actually,
Yeah,
now the Spielberg is coming out, Disclosure Day next week,
yeah,
and I'll definitely go to the theater
yeah,
to see that.
absolutely.
Because even though I'm like late period Spielberg,
Mhm.
all right, who am I to say whether Spielberg is any good? But you know what I mean. I want to see him do something kind of in the sort of sci-fi vein again because he hasn't done it
Yes,
for so
yes,
many years.
absolutely.
Um,
Mhm.
okay, an actor slash actress that you'll watch in anything.
Oh, I'd have to say, like, Paul Mescal, maybe Michael Fassbender used to be.
Great, great choices. Yeah, I don't think we've had Fassbender before. A couple of people have
No.
said Mescal, for sure.
Mhm.
Mind you, I have to say,
Yeah,
Gladiator 2,
yeah.
he didn't do anything for. Only Denzel
No,
could
but
save
yeah.
that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, exactly. But we you
um,
can forget some of them.
yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay, question six. An actor slash actress you don't quite get.
Ben Affleck.
Yeah, he can be a bit. I can see him being irritating to people.
Yeah.
I don't mind him in the right thing, you know?
Yeah. He could be okay, but like, yeah, like the worst Batman ever.
Yeah, maybe. In the worst Batman film, or one of them anyway, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. Probably wasn't
Okay.
his fault. But.
Yeah. Question 7. Walk out or suffer through to the bitter end?
Suffer through to the bitter end,
Oh,
usually. Like, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, if I went to the theater and I'm paying for it, I mean, it would have to be something that just there was one film once that I walked out. I can't remember what it was at some festival, and it was just so offensive. I was like, I
Okay.
can't. Um,
I can't deal with
but
this anymore.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it takes a lot to make me walk out. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's changed for me over the years. It's
yeah,
like if I can't deal with it, I'm like, nah, I'm out of here.
yeah.
Um,
Well, streaming's different though, because I'll turn
yeah,
stuff off. But sometimes, most time I suffer through, but like, yeah,
yeah.
Babylon was one I couldn't finish.
Oh, right, okay. I didn't mind that so much, but anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So where are we? Question 8. What film first made you feel seen?
I'm not sure. I guess I could go back to what I was talking about with like the Lost Daughter. I know it's kind of late.
Yeah.
Um, but
It's a tricky one, that,
yeah,
actually.
that is a tricky one. Yeah.
Okay, this is always an interesting one as well. Question 9. A film that you'd consider a relationship deal breaker? So you can interpret that however you want. It can be a film
Yeah.
that someone you're with has to like, or a film that if they liked it, you're like, that's weird. This is not going to
Yeah.
work.
Okay, I guess if someone didn't like The Princess Bride, I'd have to wonder what was wrong with him.
Okay, yeah, that's a good choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is kind of, yeah. That's
Yeah. It's
film
like,
love 101, isn't it, really? It's you got to
Yep.
like that film.
Mhm.
Um, okay, final question. What female filmmaker would you like to make a film of your life?
Sofia Coppola.
Great choice. What's your favorite one of hers? Is it Lost in Translation or something later?
Um, no, I think well, Lost in Translation, or I really loved Virgin Suicides.
Got you.
I haven't seen that one in years, but I remember just watching it. I was like, whoa, like blown away. Um, yeah, I think those two. I really like Priscilla as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I enjoyed that as well. I forgot about that recently. Great. So, Amanda, thanks so much for your time. It's been great. I really enjoyed the conversation. And keep in touch about your non-profit. If you ever need a kind of guest session or anything like
Absolutely.
that, then tap me up for it. It's
Yeah,
but
and
yeah,
then that means yeah, I'm really looking forward to your lectures that you're doing too. Like
yeah. I
excited.
decided to put that out just so I couldn't get out of it then. So
Yeah.
we'll
Nice.
see
Yay.
we'll see how they go, because I'm going to do it on here, and obviously I'll do maybe for like 50 minutes to an hour of talking, and then we'll have some conversation afterwards, but we'll see how they go, because I've got ideas for other things, but it's kind of a test the water experiment. But anyway, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks so much. I really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much. Thank you. You too.